Today, we will be reacting to Bradley Beal's and Monte Morris's comments on their media day and react to the recent signing of Marcin Gortat. Next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? This is your boy Brandon Scott with my guy Ed Oliver. How you doing today, Ed?
Feeling good, man. Talking Wizards basketball, man. Preseason is almost here. I'm going to be waking up at 6 a.m. Or really earlier than that to watch them play in Japan on Friday. I can't wait. Then they play on Sunday at 1 a.m. So they're going to be keeping me up, but I can't wait.
Yes, sir. So today we will be touching base with Bradley Beal's and Monte Morris's comments on Media Day, and we will touch on the recent hiring of Marcin Gortat. But first, we're going to start with Bradley Beal's comments, and let me pull up his comments right now. Now, Ed, the comments that kind of hit me the hardest as far as what he says, quote unquote, win, lose, or draw, it'll be my fault, and I accept that. Now, as a fan, knowing that he signed a long-term Supermax, these are the words that I want to hear. He's taking responsibility of being that guy, being a star player, take responsibility. I mean, that's what you expect from your Supermax guy. So, I mean, what do you think?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, it does fall on him. He's going to be the deciding factor. Of course, you could look at Porzingis and look at Kuz, but Brad's supposed to be the number one guy. He got paid like it, 35% of the salary cap. And when you're given a no-trade clause, when you're given a 15% trade kicker as well, some sweeteners in the deal, and you're the face of the franchise, it does. And last year, we didn't see him be the deciding factor in games. He didn't dominate a lot of games last year like he usually does. And we know he's an all-star caliber player, a three-time all-star, all-NBA player, average 30 points a game back-to-back. But he's got to be able to finish games. And I always talk about how he's performed in the clutch. But he hit the nail on the head. They are going to go as far as he takes them. Same thing with Porzingis. But if he doesn't play up to par and play at a high level, then the Wizards will not make the play-in or the playoffs. But if he can play at a high level and get back to the way that he played in 2021 or 2020, where he was able to take over games and dominate in some points in the games or at certain stretches, and Porzingis plays well too, and they feed off his energy, then, the Wizards can beat expectations. They're a heavily slept on team, but at the end of the day, your star player, your max player, he has to play like it. He has to play like a number one guy. So he hit the nail on the head. So he's going to have some huge games, some huge performances, and get back to that all-star level if the Wizards want to take a step to go anywhere this year.
Oh, I totally agree. Being that guy and getting that guy money, there's things that comes along with that. And we talked before in previous episodes about, clutch shots. Who's that guy that's going to take that shot with 3 seconds left, fourth quarter? It's got to be him. Whether, there's debate whether it is him, but it should be him. You know what I'm saying? Because he's that Supermax guy. He should be that guy to take that shot. You look at any superstars, man, Jordan, hey, it's famous on the documentary. They asked Michael Jordan, hey, who's going to take that last shot? Hey, easy, me. That's what you want to see from your guy, that confidence. So I like what I'm hearing. He's taking a central role. He's really taking the leadership role to heart. That comment, him talking about how he, playing with Kuz and playing with KP all together. He's very, very motivated for that. It's just, I like what I hear from him, being that leader. He is saying all the right things. So, I'm very impressed. This is what you want to see going into the season, the focus. Him taking that lead and, taking charge in the mini camp. This is what you want to see because, last couple years, 2-3 years, he was that guy. John Wall was out hurt, the 1 year with Russ, so we were the whole time, the fans were waiting on him to take that central role of being the leader of the team. And now he's doing that and he's comfortable doing it. So, and I'm loving it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a process. Not everybody is a vocal leader or a guy that can be, kind of like a bad cop or, who Russell Westbrook was that guy who would yell at Denny, yell at Gafford. You know, Brad's more of a relaxed guy, reserve guy from what I see. And then we have seen him animated on the bench where, there was the game where we were eliminated from the playoffs and he was, put his head down on the bench and whatnot. We've seen times where that's happened, or, when we only had 8 players due to the virus and, he's just laid up on the bench with his arm on the other chairs, and there's the whole bunch of Red Bull towels and whatnot. So we've seen his body language is huge too. So other guys are looking up to him. Denny, young guys, Johnny Davis, that's a guy he's going to be taking under his wing. It sounds like in press conferences, he texted Johnny Davis during the summer league, telling Johnny Davis, hey, go out there and be you basically, and be aggressive, so he's already doing stuff like that, reaching out to guys. I know last year they had a team dinner. On Friday as well. The KCP said Brad had an MLK. Caldwell Pope said Brad had an MLK speech, and we've seen the AAU things too, where he's yelling at his AAU guys, his AAU players. So is he going to do stuff like that? Is he going to step up and set expectations for other guys, to hold other guys accountable himself as well? In defense, we want to see him step up on the defensive side of the ball, court as well. So it's a big year for leadership for Brad. I'm intrigued to see how he responds from last year. And I don't want to see another, him being a leader too. It was on that 35-point game where they were up by 35 against the Clippers. Some of that's on Brad too, being a leader. And it was on everybody. I'm not just going to blame him, but that game, I just can't see a number one guy letting that happen. I need him to never let that happen again, So some of the lapses they had last year, it doesn't fall on him, but it starts with him. So big year for him coming up.
Totally agree. That was the alarming thing for me last season was, early on, you saw them laughing at press conferences, having a good time, and the 10-3 start, hey, I'll be happy to, good start, but when things started to go sour, he kind of disappeared. He kind of, so the leadership to me is the big part that I'm looking forward from him. For a while now, being that guy. Second. And you brought it up defensively. I like to see him step his game up defensively. It is known that he said that he wanted to be all NBA defense. So, and really, if you add all NBA defense to him, his tool bag as a player, the sky's the limit. Because I believe that his 3-point percentage will get better. He's a good shooter. He's a natural shooter, so he will get better, especially now that we have a point guard that can distribute and push the pace. So, I'm very intrigued for the upcoming season as far as Brad Beal. You know what I'm saying? I'm very, very intrigued. So, but before we move on, today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continuous source for all your sport wagering information, with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, Ed, moving on to Monte, the new starting point guard. From watching his media, there's a few things that kind of came out to me from Monte. Obviously, the history with West, that seems to be the big motivating factor for him as far as him kind of his transition being smooth to DC. There's a lot of experience with West. They know the system, him and the Will of Thrill. So the transition has been very, very smooth. And to me, that is just shows just how that's what kind of really motivates me as far as really being optimistic with this season, because they're coming in with a clear head. There's a lot of familiarity. I'm sure I butchered that, but they're very. I'm very optimistic for that reason, because clear head. They're working together. They're working on the chemistry. So hearing this from Monte. And another comment that really rung to me as far as media day is something I've been saying the entire time: pushing the pace. He is telling pushing the pace is what I want to hear from him. I am telling you, if they push the pace, this team will be a playoff team, because they've got number shooters, man. They've got nothing but shooters now. So if they push that pace, and then you got high flyers like Gaff, KP, the pick and roll. So what do you think about the comments from Monte?
Yeah, like you said, with Wes, what stood out to me, he said he has a father-son relationship with Wes Unseld Jr. He also said happy belated birthday to him. He's getting up there, so he was joking around. He's a smiley guy. He's an energetic guy. He told us about he always wants to smile through adversity. Also, he said he talked about John Wall. He said on the energy when John Wall was the Wizards point guard, he said, why can't we bring that energy back? We owe this city a successful season. So, actions are louder than words. We haven't seen that, since 2017 or the playoffs when we made it with Russ and Brad. I mean, that didn't really match that energy. Nobody was in the stands, not many people. And it didn't match that energy when John Wall hit that game winner, against the Celtics. So we do want to get back to that energy. The players got to play like it. They got to put that energy on the court, and it's more actually the talk. But and Wes and Monte have talked about the Wizards way. I do want to see what the Wizards way is. I'm interested to see what that is because I haven't seen it yet. I don't know what it is yet. Is it defense? Is it pushing the pace, like you said? Is it playing hard? Is it diving on the floor for loose basketballs? Like, what is it? Is it energy, communication on defense? What is it? I want to know what the Wizards way is. So that's the biggest question mark for me since they brought that up. But yeah, that father-son relationship with, the Denver familiarity that you brought up too. They know what Wes wants. They know the spots. It's about being comfortable too. They've hammered down chemistry. They've hammered on being comfortable, which a lot of guys just weren't last year. And he can be like a player coach out there too. You want your point guard to be an extension of the head coach, a guy that can echo and call out the plays and basically knows what Wes is looking for too, defensively and on the offensive side of the ball. So all offseason they talked about finding a point guard. They wanted a pass first point guard. They want a guy where the ball doesn't stick. And I think he fits perfect for this offense because he's a guy that can get Brad the ball. He's a guy that's hit clutch shots for the Nuggets too. He had a game winner against the Warriors last year. So I'm excited to see what Monte can do, man. I think the relationship with Wes Unseld Jr. should definitely help out a lot. And he talked about he has a chip on his shoulder because he was a second round pick. A lot of people forget that he was a second round pick. He had to work his way up. He played in the G League for a year, worked his way up. Man, he's a grind, blue collar, tough it out point guard. So I'm interested to see. And he was best friends with Kuzma in middle schools. He talked about that too. So I'm interested to see how Monte fits with this roster.
Absolutely. I think it was a very underrated trade. I think, it was a very kind of under radar trade, but I think he's going to be great for his offense. I think he's going to be great for this team. It's just like you mentioned him comparing to the John Wall era. He knows that, the players, that's what got me too. The players know where they're headed as far as play style. They know they need to push the pace. Last season, it was way too slow. And, we touched base previous episodes talking about, how I think that West needs to sacrifice a part of his system. I do think this needs to be a better defensive team. And in the same token, if you look at teams that push the pace in NBA history, defense took the back seat. If you look at the Mike D'Antoni days with Steve Nash, they were fast and they can move, but defense was an afterthought. So what I'm looking for, honestly, is being a better defensive team and a faster team. And I think that with Monte as point guard, it's going to be faster. He's just. I was a big fan of this trade. I really am. Yeah, I think that his familiarity with West is a leg up. Him and Will. So like I said, I totally agree with you. I think that I'm very intrigued because this team is very underrated right now. I think they're going to really surprise people. There's a lot of scoring talent on this team. So I like what I hear and I like what I see from him so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he also talked about we got a big team. We got a lot of length to put the lineups out there and disrupt things. Talking about the defensive potential of the team. Talked about Will the Thrill too. He said we can expect high flying from Will. He's a vet. We call him microwave because when he gets going, it can be tough for opponents. Y'all going to hear him a lot because he talks on the court. End quote. So talked about DeLon Wright too. He's really gave encouraging things about his teammates. And this is what media day is. Like I said, it's a honeymoon period. You're supposed to say good things. He talked about the Eastern Conference too. He said we're being slept on. That was one of the big quotes that he said too, that we're being slept on. So he said a lot of good things. I'm interested to see if they can, put their words and put it on the court. I really want to see Will play. I'm really interested to see Will play. He's one of the guys that I'm looking for in the preseason game against the Warriors because he's a guy that's fighting for that small forward spot. But Monte, he's going to have the keys to the car. And you look at the last couple of point guards that Brad has played with, it's been a roulette or a swinging. It's just been a bunch of guys that he played with since John Wall has been out. Dinwiddie, Russ, Isaiah Thomas, Tim Frazier, and Ishmael Smith, Howell Neto. He's just played with so many guys. So we're trying to find a guy that can fit with Brad that he can play with for more than just a year, and it's not working out. So hopefully Monte is that guy that is finally that fit next to Brad.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think he will because it takes a lot of pressure off Brad. Last season, he was trying to be a scorer and a distributor, and it's just he's natural too. He showed he can do the job, but why put too much pressure on your guy like that? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You have a point guard who can distribute, and you touched it earlier. Point guard is a quarterback of the team.
Exactly.
Quarterback. You know what I'm saying? He's the guy that runs the show. He runs everything. So, he's an orchestrator. So I see, it's a plus in my opinion. Taking that pressure off of Brad, even Kuz, it takes a lot of pressure off your core guys. Because KP came big, Kuz was big last season. So it takes a lot of pressure off of these core guys to have to, always be that guy all the time. You have a lot more pieces that can, even if Kuz has an off night, you have players like Will Barton, Monte Morris can step up, and it's just, and that's another comment that's been made during media day, but really by all the players, interchangeable. You have a lot of guys who can play different positions, and even Monte Morris, look, he's a point, but he can play two guard. Will, I mean, he can play two guard, he can play the wing. So you got guys who can do many things, and that's why I think this is such a good collection of guys compared to past teams. Because you have guys who, there's so many possibilities for West. You know what I'm saying? Like he can, there's so many different lineups he can play. And it just is going to catch so many teams off guard because, we've talked about Gaff and KP being in the same lineup. We talked about maybe Kuz and Rui in the same lineup. It's just so many combinations he can use. So, that's why I'm optimistic. This team is just, man, they're going to be good. I mean, I know people are sleeping on them. But I think they're going to be better than advertised.
You got 50 wins?
All right, man. I don't know yet about that. You know what I'm saying? But I'd like to see 45 right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think they're better than 500. You know what I mean? I definitely think they're better than 500, but I'm going to pump the brakes on 50 right now. But.
Yeah, no, I know. I fell into that trap last year when they started 10-3. I thought they were going to do something that they haven't done since 1979. So I was very excited after that.
I mean, 79's been a minute, so you want to be optimistic. But last year they got me last year. But it's just there's certain factors about his team is different than last year. Mm-hmm. The clear, their heads being clear is big. Last year was a very chaotic season. Mm-hmm. The injuries, Rui going through his stuff mentally. You know what I mean? It's just it was so much going on. And like I touched earlier, that's a tough situation for a first-time head coach to come into. Injuries and issues. I mean, you're dealing with chemistry issues and it's your first year. That's got to be hard, man. I mean, so the fact that he came out of it unscathed, he's ready to work. I'm very impressed by what I see from West. And, just from everybody. They're all saying the right things. Teamwork, chemistry, getting better. Defense. Man, when they started talking about defense, man, I almost had a heart attack, man, because I've been waiting on that. Mm-hmm. But I'm very intrigued. But before we move on, we're going to move on, excuse me. We're going to move on to Wizards signed Marcin Gortat to the coaching staff. I think that's a good move. I think that Marcin Gortat, we were talking about this before the episode. Marcin Gortat, number one, knows how to play with Brad. He knows how to play with a distributing fast point guard like Monte. So, just like we were talking about Ryan Kerrigan being signed to the Washington Commanders, I think this is a very, very good move. Very good move because he can show them what it takes to be a center. I'm not going to say athletic center because, he's kind of in the gray area, when it comes to athleticism, but he knew how to play with John. He knew how to play with Brad. So what do you think about the signing?
I love it. So this is the reports from Michael Lusak. I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing his name. He's the guy that tweeted it out. He is a high performance coach, college and pro assistant coach. So shout out to him. The report he tweeted was Marcin Gortat is to be an assistant for 2 weeks with the Washington Wizards. Great vet, learned from him so much. So they said about 2 weeks after when they return from Japan, they're going to that's when he's going to start. So I love it. Like you said, bringing in Ryan. I love when they bring in former players to help out with the team. I think this is huge. Help Gortat can help Daniel Gafford set screens for Monte Morris. Same thing with Bradley Beal. Marcin Gortat had great chemistry with Brad. He had great chemistry with John. He was one of the best screen setters, pick and roll bigs in the game when he was playing. Also pick and pop, that mid-range jumper, or even sometimes in the paint in the lane, he would shoot a jumper too. And that hook shot, maybe help Gafford with that hook shot, because Marcin Gortat had that hook shot that he always had in the Polish hammer as well. So, Gortat had a couple post moves here and there too. So I love this, and he can really help Gafford out, like I said. And same thing with Kristaps, using that his wide frame. Gafford is a lean guy, but still, how to use your frame. And then Gortat, he did used to move on his screens. He did. I'm not gonna lie. He would, move on the screens and set some illegal screens here and there. But in defensively too, Gortat was a good rim protector for his size too. I thought he was a good rim protector. I thought he was a great rebounder too. So I think he'll be great. And he always ran the floor. Like, he was always running the floor. He would always try to be the first one there because he knew John wanted to run. So he did exactly that. So you talk about pushing the pace. Gortat is a guy that loved to run the floor 94 feet each time. So I think he's a great example. And same thing with Taj. Taj can do the same thing too. I won't forget about him. Vernon Carey, the young guys too. Vernon Carey, I won't forget about him. Jaime Echenique, him too. So I think these guys should be nothing but a sponge, learning from Gortat and soaking up the knowledge. I loved Gortat in the playoffs against the Pacers. I love Gortat in the playoffs against the Hawks, going up against Dwight Howard. I love Gortat in the playoffs. There was another series where he played really well, but Gortat, man, and people, he was a second round pick too, so he can relate to Monte Morris. He was a second round pick in 2005, worked his way up behind Dwight Howard, so he had to work his way up. So I love the signing. I know it's not a full long-term signing, but it's going to be for 2 weeks as of right now. Maybe it could become a long-term thing. Ryan Kerrigan was only signed or hired for a couple of weeks, and next thing you know, he really fell in love with it, or he liked it, and he's a full-time member on the Commander staff. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good signing, and hopefully it's a long-term fit because, a few things you touched on. One, post moves. The biggest knock on KP as far as his desire to play was back to the basket is post moves, being up there with these bigs like Embiid, because if the team's serious about competing, you've got to go against the Embiids of the Eastern Conference. So I think it's a very good move. A lot of these guys can learn from him and Taj. He ran with John. If you can run with John, look, it was like not too long ago, your three fastest point guards in the league were what? West, De'Aaron Fox, John Wall. So John could move, obviously before the injuries, but he could move. So this guy could keep up with John, man. So, so he knows how to play with a point guard who's fast, who can distribute, and he knows Brad. So there's a lot of knowledge that they can take from him. And I think that these are the kind of under the radar moves that really build successful organizations because, like I said before in previous episodes, yeah, I get the lack of optimism. I get it. We have a long history. Like you said, 1979. I'm just saying, I'm an 80s baby, so I'm just saying, it's been a minute. But, you got to kind of look at things like this, that these little moves are really the right moves to make to push the organization forward. Tommy's trying to set himself apart. And like you said, while I agree, his draft game's weak. He can trade. It's definitely weak. He can get better, but the trades he's made are dope. They're good moves. And the organization. I'm gonna touch back on the documentary, Michael Jordan documentary. The general manager. Man, I just had his name too. But the general manager of the Chicago Bulls. They had that riff with Jordan, how he said it was organizations that win championships. And obviously the player is the most important part. But I agree. Organizations do win. You got to have the right pieces. You know, I'm a military dude, so you know I'm gonna kind of do that correlation. You know, you always and when people think about the military, they always think about the SEALs, Green Berets, the guys at the tip. But it's always a supporting cast that are really very, very important, right? And when you touch base now with the Wizards, your most important guys are the guys behind the scenes, coaching. Wes, does he make the right rotations? His job is very, so these are the moves that I'm trying, that I like to see from this organization.
100%. I mean, you got Antawn Jamison on the staff. You got a lot of guys. And, the Wizards hiring Wes Unseld Jr. As well. So you got a lot of former Wizards and people that have been in the organization before. Tommy Shepard was with the organization for a long time. Some people look at it as a bad thing, as nepotism or whatever. But you can look at it either way. But yeah, I think it's a great sign. You brought up some good points. Thank you for your service. But I think Gortat is a guy who played well here, and he's getting rewarded. I mean, I know he had some rifts with John Wall towards the end of his tenure here in Washington. The everybody eats thing, and then the John Wall saying spoon-fed buckets. But I think this is a positive signing. I think this is it can only help this team. Like you brought it with Tommy, his drafting has been, I just want to see more. The jury's still out on the drafting. I think the trading has been really, really good. The Gafford trade, I love that trade. Russell Westbrook, he requested a trade. So, I thought he made the best out of that situation. John Wall, he wanted to get off that contract, and unfortunately the protected pick is hurting us right now. But Dinwiddie and Bertans for Porzingis in the second round pick, that's just a steal. I mean, to get two guys that you didn't want to be here, they didn't want to be here either. To bring in a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, a talent like that, and bring in a second round pick, I think that's a heck of a trade. The jury's still out on that trade, but I think it's a great trade. But the draft picks, they're all good players, but they're just not blue chip players. And I just want to see more from these guys. So, like you said, I do want to see more from his draft picks.
Yeah, I totally agree. But we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode.
Oh, and one more thing. The whole Jay Crowder thing, yeah, we talked about this too off air yesterday. The Wizards do have a trade exception. So possibly they could. Like you said, there's the reports about Jay Crowder too. They said another team was interested in him too. So I'm sorry I'm bringing this up late, but it just sat on my mind yesterday and this morning too. The Celtics, Grizzlies, Heat, and Mavericks could also show interest. This is from NBA Central. So we'll see what happens. I just don't think it's going to happen. But like you said, you would love to have Jay Crowder here. I think he would fit on this roster, but I think Tommy's a wait-and-see guy. He only makes moves at the deadline. He doesn't make moves, before. I think he's somewhat of a reactive guy a little bit. I don't see him making a move like that. But I would love to. Jay Crowder, I would, because he's a winner. That's what he does. He wins games. He's always in the playoffs, whether he's the third or fourth or fifth option on a team. Some guys just know how to win. So that's my last take on him.
No, I definitely appreciate it because that's good news to me because I think this is a move that we need to make, man. I mean, it's just Jay Crowder, if you look at every team he's been on, he's been an essential piece to that team. Mm-hmm. Boston Celtics teams, the year that unfortunately we lost in 7 games, he was a big part of that team. He can defend. He can defend at a high level. He can shoot behind the arc. He's a dog to the point where it's not disruptive. This is what we need. This, we're still a very young team. We have older guys, but the guys we drafted. But veterans are very important to winning organizations. So no, absolutely, this would be a move that I think he needs to make. Will he make it? Tough to tell. It's right now we're still figuring out Tommy. We're still figuring out, he's made some risky moves and then he's kind of been hesitant, especially with trading his young guys. So maybe he needs to be more inclined to moving one or two of these young guys to really improve this team. But we're going to go ahead and end it right there. Thank you, everybody, for watching today's episodes. Thanks again for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on our Audacity app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you, everybody, for watching today. Take care.